All right, hello everyone. Because it says that if we learn the laws of the Holy Temple, it's like building it and it helps build it. So let's learn a little bit. We were a little bit derelict in that this week. We learned one time, but let's learn something else. Here in the Holy Temple, there was the altar. The altar. The altar is the main feature of the Holy Temple. There's an argument between the Ramban, Rabbi Moses ben Maimonides, and about 100 years later it was Rabbi Moses ben Nachman, Ramban. And one of them says that the main feature of the Holy Temple was the altar, and the other one says that the main thing was the tablets in the Holy of Holies. In any case, this was certainly a very main thing, and the it was that was where the sacrifices were made. Over here was where the sacrifices were. What was called the Holy of Holies. Some of the sacrifices, anyway, they were slaughtered, and then the blood was spilled over here and over here on the two corners. And this is where it was brought. Here's the altar. Pretty impressive, right? Sometimes they would walk. There was also a ramp that went around the sides. So let's just learn a little bit about this. First of all, I'll just have a picture here where here's where it was. Here's where the altar was. You went into the Holy Temple from here, and then you went up these stairs. And this was the area where only the Kohanim could go. And this is where the altar was. And then after that, there was a laver over here. The Kohanim would wash their hands and their feet. And then this is where the holy was, and here's the holy. Here's where the menorah was, and the face bread. It was a 6-layer table with the special bread in it. Bread on it. It was thick, soft matzah. It was matzah, and here in the middle was the golden altar where they offered the incense. Right, that was the first thing on incense, and here was the table, and here was the candelabra, and here was the Holy of Holies. This was a different room. Okay, but let's talk about now this altar over here. This altar is the main thing. So let's learn some laws from the Rambam about this altar. Ready? Here we go. This is the second chapter of the laws of the Holy Temple. The Mizbeach, the altar that I just showed you. Makomo, its place, makuvan biyoter, is very, very exact. Ve'en mishanin oto, you can never change it forever. Never. After the altar was put in its place, you can never offer sacrifices anywhere else except on that altar. Shnei like it says, V'zeh mizbach la'olam, ola, Israel. This is the altar for the sacrifices in the Jewish people forever. And it was like 32 amas on 32 amas, which means about like 50 feet by 50 feet. Ubamigdash in the Holy Temple, Ne'akad, I'm sorry, yeah, the Ubamigdash in the Holy Temple, Ne'akad Yitzchak Avinu, this is exactly the place where Abraham took Yitzchak to sacrifice him. Like it says, Lech Lachal Eretz HaMoriah, to the land of Moriah. And it says Shlomo built the temple on Har HaMoriah. It's called Har HaMoriah. So the temple where the temple is right now is on Har HaMoriah. We don't really know exactly where the place of the altar is now. We'll still see. Masur B'Yada called, it is a heritage in the Jewish people. Shemakom Shebana, but David, this place where King David and King Solomon built the Mizbeach. This is in the Goren. This was the threshing house of Aravna. It's a Ravna Yabusi. King David bought it for money. That was this place where this fellow Aravna had, and King David bought it with money. He bought Jerusalem and bought the place. And this was that place. This was the same place where Abraham built his altar to sacrifice Yitzchak, and that's the whole basis of Judaism. This whole sacrificing of Yitzchak, which to go on into it right now is not the place. Why exactly is that? What's that got to do with Judaism? Why is it the foundation of Judaism? We read it in our prayers every day that Abraham took Yitzchak to sacrifice him. Very amazing thing. But just in a nutshell, that's the whole idea of the sacrifices, is doing what God says without thinking about yourself. Doing what God says without thinking about yourself. And that was the basis of Judaism. The father of Judaism was Abraham, and he took his son, who was at that time 37 years old. He took him to sacrifice them, even though it meant the end of everything all of Abraham's work and self-sacrifice that he had sacrificed. It worked all of this time because Yitzchak was born when Abraham was already 100 years old. So the 100 years of service that he had for God, if you want to detract the time when Abraham was a child. But it says that Abraham recognized God when he was 3 years old. So his whole life's work would have been down the drain. And of course, Yitzchak would have been killed. Yitzchak went also willfully. He just said, this is what God wants. This is what I'm going to do. No mention of going to heaven, no mention of hell. That's the whole idea of the Holy Temple. Doing what God wants exactly in this world. And it ended up coming up pretty good. Here we are. We're the Jewish people, right? It came out right. Okay. And if Judaism was based on any sort of normal, I say human motives, it wouldn't have lasted long. Judaism would definitely not have lasted long, especially all the difficulties the Jewish people started off in Egypt. Who would want a religion like that when it was born in slavery? Who would want something like that? But nevertheless, the purpose of in every Jew somehow deep down is a holy temple, which means doing exactly what God wants, even though it doesn't make any sense, or even though it's opposite of making sense. That's the idea. So it's that exact place of the altar. Now we're talking about the altar. The altar that was the place where Abraham bound, Akkad means he bound up, tied up Yitzchak to sacrifice him. And of course, we know he didn't. This is the same place that Noah built it when he came out of the ark. Huh? This is the same altar that Cain and Hevel made their sacrifice. Unfortunately, we had a bad offer because it said that God accepted the offerings of Cain and Hevel hated him because of it, and he killed him. This is the same place that the first man, Adam, he made his sacrifices when he was created. That's not mentioned in the Torah, but there, in fact, he was born. Adam was born from the dirt, from this place of the altar. That's why the altar brings forgiveness for everybody, because from that place of the altar, man was created. That's what it says. Chachamim. That's the Omer Chachamim and the wise men and the sages of Israel say, Adam mimakom kaparoso nivra, a man, the first man, and also we're in his image. From the place of his forgiveness, he was created. It's not that so much that the sacrifices bring forgiveness, but the attitude that the sacrifices teach, that's what brings forgiveness. Sin comes because you think too much about yourself. And the sacrifices are, think more about the Creator. Do what the Creator wants instead of what you want. Okay, number 3. What are the measures of the altar? They are very, very exact. And the form was passed down one from generation to generation. Those that the Bnei Gola that were built in the days of Ezra, right, when they came back from the 70-year exile in Babylon, it was similar to the altar which is going to be built by the Atid Lihabanot, which was going to be built by Mashiach. So it was made. The Ein Lahosif Al Midato, you can never add or detract from the measures of the altar. Huh? Okay, the altar. And again, let's show this picture of the altar. The altar is over here, right? That's the altar and the ramp that goes up to it. Here's a bigger picture. The ramp that goes up, and there was a little space over here because they used to throw the meat from here, the offering. They would throw it on the altar. Here we see the fire. Here's another fire. This is another one where they would see. This is in French. Look at that. Okay. There are some more details, but I don't want to go into all the details of the altar now. Maybe next time. Let's just one thing. This is a very interesting. Here, let's go. There we go. 3 prophets came up with the Jewish people from Babylon to build the second temple. Now, how did it go? The Jewish people, the first temple was destroyed, and they had these prophets with them. There was Jeremiah, and there was Ezekiel, and they came, Daniel, and they came out from the exile, and they were making plans to build the second temple. That's when the holiday of Purim occurred. And these times was just right before the second temple was built. And in fact, there were what were they called? The Shomonim. They delayed. Is that what it is? Yeah, they delayed the building of the temple, of the second temple. In any case, that's when the holiday of Purim was, immediately before the second temple was built. So they came up. They started building the temple, and then like 7 years after they came Ezra. Ezra came up, and he came up with all the people. Before that, there was Nehemiah. There was the 70 people of the Great Assembly. There was Daniel, and like we said, Ezra was there with them, and Mordechai. Okay, so 3 prophets also came up with the Jewish people from Babylon to tell them about the altar. Why 3 prophets? One of the prophets testified on the measures of the altar. One of them testified on that he gave testimony that God agreed that you can offer sacrifices on it. One of them, I'm sorry, okay, let's go. One of them testified, where's the place? One of them testified on the measurements, how big it is, how tall. And one of them testified and he okayed that God agreed that you can sacrifice on its sacrifices. So that's why you can't just go today and make sacrifices anywhere you want to, because you have to do it exactly on the place of the altar, which Mashiach is going to obviously tell us. So all those sacrifices, so he says, but you can sacrifice on this Mizbeach, all the sacrifices, even though the temple was destroyed. So if you would know where the place of the altar is, then you could actually, technically today, you could make sacrifices. And there are problems about impurity, but there's ways you can get. Okay, this is the last one we'll do today. The altar that Moses made, this was in the tabernacle in the desert, and that King Solomon made, that was the first temple, and that the people from exile, that's the second temple, and the one that's going to be made by Mashiach, all of them are 10 amos, about 15 feet high, each one of them, and like it's written in the Torah, that what it says in the Torah, that's only 3 amos high. That's only talking about the Marechet Levad, the place of the wood alone. And the Bnei Agol and also the people in the future, they will build it 32 amos by 32 amos. So here we go. Let's take a picture. Here we go. There's a picture of it. So from here to here was 10 amos. From here to here was 10 amos. But this was additional 10 amos. In the desert that Moses, the altar that Moses made, it was only 10 amos. That's how high it was. But here it's 32 on 32. 32 on 32. Okay, there are more details also. That is a short message about the altar in the temple. The main feature of the Holy Temple is the altar where they made sacrifices.